No, well, no, it's okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
We can stipulate on the record that it was said.
So I'm assuming I'll do the resolution first.
Okay.
And then we can do whatever we'd like to want to do here. So I'm offering the following resolution: resolved to appoint Anthony De Laurentiis to the contingent permanent position of police sergeant at an annual salary of $154,010 effective August 15th, 2024, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks.
Second.
Yes, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Second is, third, I guess, in this. Nope. Fourth, appointment of a police officer in the Oregon Police Department, Robert Spatafori. And I guess just to give a little background for those who don't have it, it was in New York, in New York City in the 52nd precinct, previously a correctional officer also. And has special training in active shooter and tactical training. So the resolution that I am offering is resolved to appoint Robert Spatafori to the permanent position of police officer, grade 4, at an annual salary of $79,569, effective August 15, 2024, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, should we, let's see if I can find it. No,
I have faith in
thank you.
you.
Are we doing swearing it? Yes.
Chief Secretary.
Who do you want first? We want a sergeant?
It's, all right, I'll take the sergeant first. Thank you. I'll come to you.
Better kind of pick.
Yes, you're right. Oh, my gosh.
Yes, I'm also with
Yeah, I see. Director.
Raise your right hand. And repeat after me. I, Anthony De Laurentiis. I, if you solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Solemnly support.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the
That I will
Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States.
of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of sergeant. According, sorry, that I will faithfully, I don't want to do that.
That's okay.
That I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of sergeant.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of sergeant
According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
I know.
Yeah, I'll show you guys. Yeah, when you can license with.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations, thanks.
Okay, who's next?
Who's next?
Like there's a line of them.
I feel like there's a specific person that's
Got
next,
it.
John.
Raise your right hand. And repeat after me. I, Robert Spatafori. I, Robert Spatafori. Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. I'll support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of New York. The Constitution of the State of New York. That I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office. I'll faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police officer. According to the best of my ability. According to the best of my ability. Congratulations.
In general, like people in general.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. How are you?
No, I think it's just, new.
Oh, yeah, no, not too bad.
Thank you for the.
Thank you.
Can I?
Congratulations.
I mean, I have it, take that.
I'm so bad at
And I missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't worry.
Let me ask. Katie. The police officer, you can-
We took the picture.
That's what it is, so that's what I thought,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, so,
just something,
I thought that's what you said.
yeah.
sorry. My son's moving up to law school today and my wife is on the way back, so.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Where's he going?
Northeastern.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, so work session. I thought the best way to start the dog discussion is I'm gonna pull the letter that the Herb Dog Group sent us and also sort of give you, if I could wave a magic wand, what I would do. That way, you want, if you want to argue with me over something I've already said, I'll do. And secondly, I should apologize. We were having an email conversation and I basically said, okay, let's hold it. I didn't say that because I didn't want to hear what everybody had to say. I said it because I wanted to have the conversation in a public meeting. But I was listening to what everybody said, so. Okay, so this is, I think it's item 7E, the correspondence from the Irvington Dogs group. And I think I counted like 27 signatures on it. I hope this letter finds you well. My name is Ken Kleeman. I'm writing as a member of Herb Dogs, a community group dedicated to advocating for dog owners in Irvington. Currently, our focus is to gain access for dogs to Matheson Park. In the Main Street area, many residents have limited access to public spaces where we can walk our dogs and engage with fellow dog owners. The limitation not only impacts our ability to exercise our pets, but also hinders the socialization of our dogs that can occur through a supportive dog owner community. By allowing dogs in Matheson Park, we can foster a more inclusive environment that benefits all residents. We understand and respect the need to maintain the quality and safety of our parks. As responsible dog owners, we are committed to adhering to rules and guidelines that ensure the park remains a pleasant place for everyone. To this end, we propose streamlined rules with designated dog walking hours as an initial step. This approach allows us to demonstrate our commitment to responsible dog ownership while providing an opportunity for community members to meet with one another, share the park peacefully, and avoid incidents. The proposed streamlined rules we suggest include designated dog walking hours during specific times of the day. We're hoping for morning and evening hours and some hours on the weekend. Mandatory leashing of dogs within the park. Dog owners carry waste bags and clean up after their pets using designated waste bins. Limit access to certain areas of the park to ensure safety and cleanliness, avoiding the playground. Registering dogs online through the Village of Irvington to help ensure a sense of accountability for following the rules and communicating to the dog community updates about dog rules, events, etc. We also encourage the periodic review of the rules and community feedback to assess the program's success. We believe that with these measures in place, Matheson Park can serve as a shared space that enhances the quality of life for all Irvington residents. Should this initiative prove successful, we hope it can pave the way for more flexible rules hours at a future date. We kindly request the opportunity to discuss this proposal further and explore the potential for a test program that will allow us to work out any challenges to successful implementation. Your support and consideration are greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time and attention to this matter. We look forward to working together to create a more inclusively welcoming Irvington. So. Open. Okay. So if I was just going to make a rule set to start with, and I see that the rec superintendent is here, since this is a work session, we may ask you to come up and answer some questions, but this part within the meeting is a work session. One, I would have online registration, but of a very limited nature. And in other words, something that can be done in a couple of minutes. You're basically showing that you're licensed with, I had written the town of Greenberg, but I understand that there may be people coming from outside of Greenberg, in which case, if they can show they have a dog license, I could live with that because that's covering rabies and generally the identification of the breed if there's a problem. And I would ask for contact info. So it could be an email so that if rules or hours change, we can communicate with the owners. There's no fee. And we're still debating whether or not there even has to be a tag or something like that. You might give somebody a card that says, hey, I'm registered, go, leave me alone. But maybe at the end, when I'm done talking, maybe you may want to come up and make comments on anything I'm saying, but that's about as far as I would go with the registration. And I was asked, because I violated my own rule by talking to a board member about this, or my own request, forgive me. Are there other parks that have, dog parks that have registration? And there are at least, I found 3 in Westchester, and I didn't make an exhaustive search, but they are, if I can find them, I know there's one in Greenberg. Well, I'll find.
Dog parks or just parks that require?
They're dog parks. Generally, they're dog parks and not parks where people are walking. So there is a distinction. That's fair.
Right, okay.
You'll have to take my word for the moment that I found.
No, I think that's fine. I mean, I guess the question is, are there any, there are dog parks that require certain licensing rules, but you didn't find any just general parks that allow dogs?
I think that's
that
fair.
require.
That's correct.
Okay.
Hours. The park normally opens at 7, so it's probably 7 to 9 a.m. 7 days a week, and 6 to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday to start with. There may be days if dog owners, because they're catching the train or something, want to get in there at 6 a.m. We'll try to figure out how to open it earlier, but it's going to take somebody from rec or, or somebody else who's got a key who's willing to go down there and do it. Dogs must remain on a leash of no more than 6 feet. No more than 2 dogs per person. If somebody's got 3 and they want to have a conversation, I'm happy to change that. But the point is, it's not dog walkers. You don't want to have more dogs than you can control. Owners have to clean up and remove from the park any dog waste, unless we have another alternative. And there may be, I mean, they still have to clean it up, but the point about removing it from the park, there's some discussion about installing a station, if you will, but where there would be bags for cleanup bags and a place to drop things so that it's not in drop dog
A
waste.
specific dog poop station.
Correct. There was something like that at Halsey Pond for a time. It wasn't, it may actually have had a garbage pail, but it certainly, somebody donated it and had the bags. I know because my wife and I kept filling them with bags when we had extra bags. And then it's just more of a polite request. Please walk dogs on pathway and in designated areas, which we haven't, no dogs in playground or picnic areas. So we're not going to limit the people's ability to walk around, but there will be certain areas that they shouldn't be in. And then, and this is not really a rule, but it's likely to be posted somewhere, report owners and dogs not following rules to the rec department or police department. We have the listing there. And I had, I think the previous rules had like a $250 fine. I found that there were very common, a more common number was more like 100. I'm not looking to fine somebody, but I wouldn't mind having some version of punishment in this so that the alternative is not the police have to write somebody a ticket and they have to come to court. I don't want that. I would rather be able to say to somebody, hey, you let your dog off the leash, they're threatening somebody, you can't use the park. Rather than, and I will defer to perhaps the village attorney or somebody else as to whether doing it this way as opposed to relying on the law against the dog waste or having dogs unleashed, which I have not researched extensively, but I think Larry Ogrodnik, you had made the point, hey, if we have a law, why do we need a rule on top of it? my thought on this one is I would rather be able to use, I'll call it a regulatory rule that says you're misbehaving, you're gone, than have to put somebody through the legal process. So that's the extent of what I would put in, and I did look at the rules that were in place last time, and most of the pieces are in here, but perhaps in a different way that makes it more palatable. I think if you boil this all down, there's probably about 3 to 4 rules. Well, you got hours, you got leash, and you got cleanup after your dog. The rest of the stuff is kind of, here's a number to call and so on. So, fire
A
away.
quick practical thing.
Say it
A
again.
quick practical
Yeah, yeah.
thing. I think the whole dog waste thing, there has to be a receptacle in the park. It's not reasonable to ask people
That's
to
fair.
hold on to it like it's, you know,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
picnic, and it's not reasonable to tell people to send them out of the park. And they're just gonna find their garbage out there. It's even better not to have the dog poop going everywhere and to have it in one place. So one simple.
I think that's probably right. Should we
Thank you. I'm
let,
glad you agree with that.
should we let
Or
Maureen?
maybe you think,
Go ahead.
shouldn't we all just talk about how we feel before, or
Okay.
you wanna just, I mean, unless you wanna hear what you probably wanna hear what we.
No.
I understand.
She's likely to be responding to us, but I was gonna let her sort of, we have talked
Yeah.
about it, and that is something that we want to do, to
Yeah.
have a station.
Just I felt strongly about
Yeah.
that. That's why I just wanted to say something, just practical.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, yeah. I'm just imagining when I walk my dog, if I had to carry around the poop for an hour, it's like.
Yes, well, it ends up getting left in a bag on the ground.
Yeah, and
is
that's
what
another
happens.
thing. I didn't
Yeah.
think of that. I would never do that, but I understand that that could
Yeah,
happen.
happens on the Octopus.
Yeah, and,
Also gone.
we'll see, yeah. Anyway, anybody else?
I think some of the audience. is
Yeah.
Hi, I had just had a,
interested.
You gotta use the
Say
mic.
your name.
hi, I'm Keith Greenbaum. I've been a resident here since early 2019, before the pandemic. Happy to be here. Love this place, slice of heaven. Just a suggestion. My thought is, and I love the idea in general. I think it's a nice idea to maybe limit it to start, keep things simple, leash rules, etc. But when I heard your thoughts on a kind of station for dogs, I thought, does it make more sense to make everyone happy, and to make sure that there's less interaction with people that maybe are not, you know, super dog friendly, to have an enclosed area for dogs specifically, and then the poop bag station is in there. It's all kind of contained. And that's just my suggestion. I thought maybe that might be a nice way to make others in the park that are less comfortable with dogs feel more comfortable, and dog owners feel like they're not intruding.
It is a good suggestion, and it is one that we looked at. Not in Matheson Park, but elsewhere, literally
Yeah.
building a dog park, and the expense, because you must comply with the ADA,
Mhm.
Americans with Disabilities Act, was so extraordinary that we decided that was not a wise move. It was something like $650,000. I guess my take on this is I would rather, since this was tried out, similar to this, during COVID.
Mm.
I would like to see how it plays out and before, thank you.
Mhm.
See how it plays out before we start installing a fence. Because even if we had a fence and people don't comply and they don't clean up and they've got dog fights going on, it's just not gonna, or their dog, as they transit from the fenced-in area to the entrance, they're letting the dog loose. I'm gonna have a problem whether I have a fence in there or not.
Mm.
I will take your idea about having the station not, let's say, where the park is, the children's playground is, put it further out,
Mhm.
which is likely to be where the area that most people with dogs will walk.
Mhm.
And I will keep what you said in mind, because that is sort of the next generation. If we can get to creating a dog park, I think that's a great idea, even if it happens to be in Matheson, we'll see. I know, having lived here long enough, you get to see everything come around multiple times, and that discussion has been had. That
I'm
doesn't
sure.
mean, that doesn't mean the outcome was right or wrong.
Uh-huh.
I'm just familiar with the way it played out the first time.
For sure, for
Uh,
sure. I think it's a great thing regardless, and yeah, happy to hear it.
The
moving
leash rule
forward.
should keep dogs away from people that don't like dogs.
Correct.
I mean, the dog, which is with 6 feet, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the dog should never be more than 6 feet away from the person who has the dog.
Mhm.
So if you don't like dogs, you can just stay 6 feet away from people.
I will say, I think one added benefit of allowing dogs into Matheson Park is we might have less geese drop.
Yeah, I know. We're all thinking that,
At
but
least
we'll
earn
see,
7 and up.
we'll see, yeah. We're hoping for that.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
can share some
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I've heard people ask for this for a long time and, you know, like you said, we looked at other solutions, so I think this is a great place to start. I know we also looked and see what other similar parks are doing, like, you know, Dobbs Ferry has a waterfront park with a playground. Tarrytown has a waterfront park with a playground. I know Larry contacted the administrator in Tarrytown, asked if they had any problems, and they said no, and both of those places have very simple rules. I mean, basically, dogs have to be on a leash. That's really it. I think Dobbs Ferry has a little bit of language about, you know, the board might change the hours if there's a special event. And I think Tarrytown has something about, you know, please, you know, but, you know, they're pretty simple. And so I think, you know, starting simple is a good place to go, and we can always add more rules if there is a problem. But obviously dogs are allowed in many other places in Irvington, on the street. And, you know, other parks in the village. So I think it's something we should for sure try. I'm not super excited about the registration. I know, John, you're trying to make it as easy and seamless as possible. I think that's good.
And that, by the way, is something we might ask you about when you come up. And, oh, I see.
it's just, yeah, it just seems like the kind of thing that is like so unique that I think most people wouldn't even realize they had to do it. And it's especially problematic if you have like family or friends visiting from out of town. Like, why would they register? They wouldn't even know to register because it's an unusual thing that it wouldn't cross your mind. Like, oh, I'm gonna be in Irvington in 3 months. I better register so I can bring my dog. And again, who's gonna really check it anyway? So I feel like, you know, people walk their dog on the street all the time on a leash. They'll be on a leash. Owners will be responsible. And you know, I think the limited hours is a good place to start to try it out. And I don't think we need to really add a lot more on top of that.
That's fair. I mean, my approach to this, regardless of where we start, is with the goal of sort of stepping back things that we have in place. It turns out you don't need registration, making the assumption that it's there to begin with, then we'll pull it back. What I think the proof is in how it rolls out, and how people behave. My only distinction, because you had compared it in another communication with, let's say, Halsey of the Woods, and maybe Larry Shopper would be able to answer this question, but I don't know if those other parks had playgrounds and people who have become accustomed to using them, and the park itself without dogs present at all. And now we're introducing something that was not there before. So I'm trying to be maybe extra cautious about the process of doing that. You know, it may be that you go through a season with registration and then you go, we don't need that. We just need to know. I mean, what I really want to see is that every dog has a, you know, a rabies tag and a license tag that they're wearing. Not that I'm going to go out there and check everyone, but you don't want somebody with an unlicensed dog.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Just one quick thing before.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I 100% agree with Mitchell, and it doesn't seem controversial that, you know, there needs to be a waste disposal in
Yeah.
the park.
So I agree with that, with the waste disposal. I think the rules for sort of having dogs in the park, a lot of them, you know, I'm fine with having your dog on a leash. I think that makes perfect sense. I think cleaning up after your dog, I think we actually have New York State laws and fines already in place. I don't know that we want to change, you know.
But that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
not to rely on. Do you really want someone to have to come to the village court?
No, the thing is,
That's really on.
but I think if we're gonna have that, then we should mirror what's already in existence, not have something that, you know.
I think it's a higher fine. You want a
Okay.
higher fine?
I mean, that's fine, but I think my biggest concern so a couple of things. I think dogs are in parks all over Westchester without incident, right? Or you have incidents like, you know, on the street here we don't monitor the dogs, we don't check if they have their licensing or not, right? Those are rules that I think are in existence and people are supposed to have. Licensing their dogs and have shots. So I think adding rules that already exist, like you really have to do it, or like you're gonna do it because you have to register. The problem I have with registering, which I have a very bad reaction to, just gives me the same feeling of when I moved into Irvington and you had to register to go to the park. You needed a permit to go to the park. Who was checking, who wasn't checking, who was being checked. I think there is a huge space there for just selective enforcement by parks employees. Like that's a huge responsibility. Are they gonna go after dog owners? Like, are they gonna be the enforcing agents?
My answer to that is
Mhm.
only when somebody makes a call from the park. My assumption is there are not going to be people policing it unless there's a call that says, hey, there's somebody behaving badly, we need some help.
But the
And that
call
has
is gonna go to the
happened.
cop, right?
What?
The call is gonna go to the police.
It
It's
may.
not gonna go to the.
It may.
I mean, I think it should, because I was
Yeah.
in the park and there was an issue with a boy who jumped into the water. The parks employees are now, they're not really equipped to do that. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. So
Yeah, if
I
you have,
have
let's
an
put it this way,
issue.
if there's a dangerous dog of some sort, it probably goes to the police
Yeah.
and they call animal control.
Yeah.
I think we're in agreement with that.
Yeah.
I don't
So
want them going out and saying, somebody saying that one doesn't have tags on it.
Yeah,
and
I
having to
just,
check it.
I have an issue with having rules that who's going to enforce them, right? So like, if we have these rules where you have to register, you have to have tags, unless you have parks employees like checking every dog, I have an issue with like selectively checking
Mhm.
dogs, right? That, which I think to me can be very problematic. The other thing I would say is, for a lot of young families, like my dog passed away last year, but when my girls were little, my favorite thing would have been to like take my dog to the park, my tiny little amazing dog to the park with them. And so I think, if you have little kids, you're not going to go to the park from like 6 to 9 o'clock at night. I think a lot of families want to go to the park with their dog and their kids. They want to be able to walk their dog and like watch their kids play. So I think we have to be mindful of the hours. I also think a lot of people, sort of those timeframes of like before and after work are really out the window, the way we actually work now.
Yeah,
Because
I
people, a
understand.
lot of people work from home.
I
And
think-
yeah, and
well,
just one more thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go
It's
ahead.
okay. And then the other thing is, how many pilots are we gonna have? Because we've done, we've tried it before, we tried it again. Like, are we gonna keep trying it and trying it? Like, I think we should, we've talked so much about this. I would hope that we could just move forward. I understand that people could disagree with my thinking about being very, very, very against the registration, no matter how simple. Like, I think if it was, not mandatory and people wanted to do that, so then they could get updates, etc., maybe I'd be okay with that. But I don't think we should make this so difficult. I don't feel like it's rocket science. I think it's happening in many parks all over the place. And I don't see why we are so afraid that it would be so catastrophic in the park. So I don't,
I
yeah.
don't think it would be catastrophic. I don't want to be the point person for dealing with the disputes between the parents with small children and the dogs. So I would almost rather not do it than be put in that position. As far as the hours go, I mean, unless somebody else wants to be sign up as the point person, as far as the hours go, I'm to some extent following what a group of in the village dog owners have proposed. And there are other parks that don't have hours. There's Halsey and there's the woods. So if somebody has to get in the car with their dog, then that those parks are equally accessible. If it's somebody who's downtown, I think most of that group lives downtown and made the suggestion these hours would work for them. I don't mind expanding the hours, but I want to start slowly and see how it plays out.
I understand.
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I just disagree with that. So
Okay.
I'm not saying that I like would vote against some smaller program, but I strongly.
And by the way,
Mhm.
you should all know, I don't need to present this to you.
Mhm.
I'm doing it because I don't want, I mean, I could have sat with Maureen and said, let's go do it. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant. I'm saying it, I'm doing it because I want your input and I want us to try to have a consensus. That's all, the only point I'm making.
I mean, what do you mean that you mean as mayor, you can just do it?
We could,
Or-
yeah, we could
I
have
mean,
just
Paul,
said,
I mean,
here's. Well, you've made the point already that the laws provide
yeah,
that you could have dogs in the park, and that's exactly right.
yeah,
So all I'm really doing is saying to the, because the rec department does all kinds of programs that they don't come to us for approval. And this is not much different. I don't
I
want to
know.
debate it. My only point was I purposely put this out here for everybody to participate. So
I mean, understood. I
Yeah.
think this is how most things work, right? We talk about it, otherwise, what would the rest of us be sitting here for, right? I mean,
well,
I
there are
have,
some-
I
there
better
are some
things to
things we
do.
must,
I mean,
and some things
understood.
where it's
But I
permissible.
mean, I obviously have better things to do with my time than sit here if it's just to watch you make rules. But I definitely think, again, I'm one of 5 people, but I feel like we've talked about this a lot and it really, in my opinion, we should be able to move forward with something. My preference is not to overcomplicate it. And my strong preference is to avoid selective enforcement. Any rules
Yeah,
that can
That I
lead
agree with.
to selective enforcement, because to me, that is a liability for the village.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, maybe we should, unless anybody else has more
I have a
comments.
couple of things.
Okay, go ahead.
Short though, I promise.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Take whatever time.
No, it is short. So I want to push back a little bit on, I think what you might have said, or someone said
Yeah.
about a new, this is not new. So we got our dog in 2017. I immediately went to the rec department and got the license. So I knew that the program was already up and running by 2017. July 29th, 2017, right? That's when we got her. So it was in play for a long time. It kind of drifted away. Was it because of COVID? Is that why? Okay, yeah. Right, right. But
There were no dogs coming to the park.
well, that's a different issue, yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm saying is that, so that, I mean, and so I don't wanna, I just wanna push back into this is, if we were to adopt your plan.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be new, you would just be restoring essentially what was in effect. At least, and from July 2017, I'm sure it's a little bit earlier than that, right? I don't think I coincidentally got my dog the same time that the park opened. Yeah, and I just wanna note that the signage never changed outside the park, it always said no dogs allowed. Which made it, like, I know people said to me, you can't bring your dog, and I was like, I can, that's why she has this thing on.
Well,
The sign
that
says right
we're
there,
gonna
no
do
dogs
differently
allowed.
this time.
I'm just saying, anyway. The second, I just wanted to make that point because I thought it was really, really important. The thing is, I want to say the difference between a dog park and a park that allows dogs, right? I think that they're 2 different things with 2 different sets of rules that are needed.
Yeah.
That when you have a dog park, as you know from what we've been through, there are so many more rules. And the reason for that also is because you have these dogs in a concentrated place running around on leash, that the risks are much higher, right? If you're just talking about bringing dogs into the park and keeping them on leashes, I feel like the risks are way lower. And I also feel like the people, if you ask people to register, the people who are diligent and register are the least likely people to have the problem in the park. And the people who create a problem in the park are most likely to be people that don't register. So I'm not disagreeing with Arlene's reasoning at all. I'm just saying I come at it from a different place, which is, I just don't know how practical it is. I don't think we have a practical benefit in the way that we wanted to, that outweighs the work of the rec department of having to do the registration and all that other stuff. One other small point about that, and that is that if you are ending to do any kind of registration, could we please not have it on the actual dog? Because I really don't want police officers or parks employees having to go up to a dog that is now possibly afraid, being wrangled and stuff, and put your hand next to the dog's mouth in order to see if there is a thing. Ask the human to provide whatever documentation they
Right,
want,
I agree with
not
that.
the dog.
I agree.
So the old system, that the tag that they used to wear, because my dog had one, I always thought that was as a dog person, I thought that was a poor choice to draw people to dog spaces. Not that my dog would ever bite, but dogs get scared and you don't want to put in that situation. So I'm against registration, but if we're gonna do it, it should be a card, not a tag.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, just a couple of thoughts. I agree with a lot of what I've heard here as far as trying to keep this as simple as possible. I also agree with Mr. Greenbaum, Mr. Greenbaum,
Yeah, thank you.
that we do have to think about families and children and people that don't want dogs, that don't think dogs are part of your family, they're dogs and not kids. But that said, I think that leaning back towards the rules that existed before Matheson opened to the public is not sort of useful thinking. And I guess I'd push back on Mitch saying that this isn't new because we did that before, because now anyone can come into the park happily. It could be someone who doesn't know that dogs can only be there at a certain hour. They may have been there at some point and saw dogs and are coming back with their dogs. I agree with what I've heard a lot of from Larry and from Arlene. I don't see how registration is going to work. I don't see how enforcement of these rules is going to work. I think we need to have a new sign that says, dogs must be on leash. You must clean up after your dogs, and all dogs must be licensed and tagged. And that sign should be at the front gate. And I don't see how else we can do it if we're going to let dogs in. I don't even see having hours because, a percentage of people are coming for the first or second or third time and aren't going to know what those rules are. And they're going to come with their dogs and we're going to tell them they can't come in. I mean, it seems a little crazy.
We could put the hours on the sign, can't we?
We could put the hours on the sign. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, and then adjust that as we can. But again, my point is really to keep it as simple as possible. When we were thinking about things in the past, like registration and like, stricter hours, and we had enforcement of those rules, that was a different time and a different point in Matheson Park's history. I think an additional sign on the playground area, which is already closed in, that says no dogs allowed within that already existing area is absolutely necessary. I don't know how we keep dogs away from the picnic area. How are we going to do that unless in some way we really limit or outline a picnic area more so than it's done now? Because people just aren't going to follow those rules when they come in.
Or people want.
And we're
them
not going to be
follow.
enforcing them. So I don't see how, we already have a fence for the kids, thankfully, and, for the young children. And certainly dogs shouldn't go in. But I think once we make a decision to let dogs in, they're in, and we have minimum number of rules.
Okay. Do we want to let Maureen or Rick?
Before they
Can I ask-
start, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Sorry. My other concern about a lot of rules is, you changed the park sign, right? Did the park sign change the rules in the front? Did it get smaller?
It's a different sign.
different-
It's been there for years.
Yeah.
I
No, you didn't. I don't know if it had changed, but I do think what's hard, and when we met with the gatekeepers with, and they told me to go to the park and walk around, which I have done now many times at many different times. I think one of the really difficult things with when you have a lot of rules is no one standing in front of that sign and reading that litany of rules. And so it's even harder to follow rules because no one's even bothering to read them. So that's another thing that we need to be conscious of. Like, I feel like when you just said those 4 rules, I was like, oh, if you had a sign with 4 rules, you could follow
Yeah.
them, you know?
Right, well, I think it needs to be a sign that says dogs allowed, a big one.
Yeah.
And it needs to be separate from all the other things
Yeah.
that
Dogs,
we
please
allow
this.
and
I was
don't,
gonna say, look here, cameras, look here.
It's really, keep it as simple as possible and hope that dog owners are more responsible than they are in the woods and at Wolsey Pond, because I'm there all the time and dogs are off leash.
And let's say there is no registration, and our recourse then, since we won't, and just to acknowledge the practical aspects that you've raised and the difficulty of having registration, if you don't have either of those, then our recourse, if it's not going well, there's bad interactions between dogs and people, the park is a mess, and dogs are off leash, is no more dogs, correct?
Yeah.
Is that what everybody's saying?
Yeah, we
That's
could,
go out, yeah.
yeah, we would have to revise the rules, I think.
Well, it won't be, if you can't, yes, if you can find a way to solve the problem.
Yeah,
you
that's
can
what-
revise the rules, but if you
But-
can't, it's no
Right.
more dogs.
But that's assuming, right, so I'm assuming, given that it's gone fine, that it would go fine and that it exists in other parks. So it'd have to be some like, you know, it really got, you know, like hopefully nothing like that would happen and it hasn't, so I don't know that we, you know, we'll see, but it, to me, it's, you know, the same thing, like when we were talking about opening the park to non-urban people, we talked a lot for 2 years about all the possible catastrophes that could happen, and here we are, the park's open and it's fine.
Yeah, I've had a few of those in my career where you're.
Yeah.
Where you're.
Yeah, you're worried
Expecting the
about,
worst
yeah.
and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Can I ask one clarification?
Yeah.
So just, I mean, the way that this request was worded, it's only talking about Matheson. So is that what everyone is talking about, or would we also
I
think
don't
about
think
scenic
you-
Hudson?
I don't think you can do it. Larry, am I correct? There are other parties involved for scenic.
Not people.
Well, there certainly are other parties, but meaning Scenic Hudson, but I don't think anything covers dogs or lack of ability to allow dogs in
Yeah.
that park. It may just be that they have to approve something.
All right. I mean,
David Zweibel was here, and I didn't
Yeah.
verify his claim, but he had claimed that every other scenic Hudson Park does allow dogs, and ours is the only one that doesn't. I don't know if that's true or not.
yeah.
But- Okay,
I've heard that too.
right.
And Scenic Hudson Trust agreed to that. When we addressed it.
They agree to what?
Agree to no
So
dog.
understand that why we wouldn't. put
Oh,
dogs in this
I
park.
see. I see. I get it. I mean, honestly, I'd rather have that be the second, you know, make this work and have that be the same, but I do understand the
Well,
logic
just
of
wanted
the
to make sure
argument.
I was
Yeah, yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, I had actually thought scenic Hudson still had some influence over the park. Is that not true, Larry?
They hold a conservation easement over the park. That doesn't, I don't think that means they have to approve every operating rule.
Okay,
So,
Got
I
it.
mean, we can dig into the agreement, but it's, if it becomes an issue.
okay. So should we hear
Yeah.
from what they have to, hear what they have to say? And then we can try to sort of summarize where we are.
Rick Rizzullo, Chair of the RPAC. One thing that I want to clarify, because when you and the future trustee, the name eludes me at the moment, but when you came to us,
Clean up.
okay, when you came to us to talk about this, it was predicated almost exclusively on enforcement. That the people of that committee were committed to being in the park at all times during the hours that the dogs are going to be allowed, to make sure that there's no dogs off leash, they're cleaning up after their dogs, that kind of stuff. And when in fact they didn't do that, they were going to interact with that particular person. And if they weren't getting anywhere, they were going to call the police. I don't know what happened to that, but
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem is we can't have, well, I'm overstating it, but a vigilante
Yeah.
group, but I think the point he was also making, and I could understand how it could be interpreted exactly the way you just described, was that they're getting a group of dog owners so that they can socialize the concept of the rules and through, call it peer pressure, make sure that people are behaving the way they're supposed to.
and that's
Yeah.
way more enforcement than we had before.
Okay,
We had zero enforcement on the previous, because it was times in which the gate people were not there.
got it. But it's, and to just, so that we won't, I think we won't have to debate it. It's not that the board is going to deputize them, it's that they may have a presence at during many of the hours. And if somebody there sees something that's wrong, they're not in charge of, confronting the person. Their responsibility is call the police, call, whomever we have designated.
It's some form of enforcement, let's
Yeah.
put it that way.
I got it.
The other thing was, as far as the tags on the last go round with, that tag was just there to show that they have registered. There was nothing on the tag that really
Yeah.
diluted or denoted what the dog was, who his, who his family is. So
Parents.
from a distance, yeah, I didn't want to say that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Say that.
From a distance, the whoever was interacting would have been able to see that it was registered. And the reason for registration, from our point of view, from RPAC's point of view, and the noise from this side of the room is deafening because it's all about legal. What happens if a dog bites a little kid and then runs off with his owner and you don't know who it is? What recourse does the poor kid or the parents have? From the what?
How do you, if the dog is tagged, how do you know that anyway?
Because
If the dog had had an identifying tag, let's say that it had registered, then by breed, you may be able to identify it from the record. So we would have it.
What if the
I
dog, you
understand
know, what I
it's not
mixed up the
registered.
breed, or
Yeah.
did it not registered, or?
Well, the breed, the way Greenberg does it, you have to identify the breed, and you have to give evidence that it has rabies.
But what if it's a mixed breed?
Then they are supposed to specify that.
I
I
Yeah,
understand.
you know what I mean, like,
Yeah,
like,
no,
it was
I
a mixed
understand.
breed dog, and then you have like, I
Yeah,
mean,
I understand.
and if the dog had a tag, somebody would at some point, because it was like neon green for what I remember.
Yeah.
Somebody would have seen that the dog had a tag on. The tag says the dog has been got all the shots. That's concern number one. Concern number two is, what kind of recourse does the parent and the child or whoever was bit by the
did we
dog?
have any instances of people being bit in the park
We've never had dogs in the park.
when we had the pilot program?
Like I said, there maybe were 20 or 25 signups, and only about 5 or 10 people ever once in a while brought their dogs into the park.
Okay, and then Larry, when you did sort of asked around, were there instances in Terrytown, and they have lots of dogs in their park? And they have an open playground also there.
I didn't ask that question. I didn't do any organized research on this.
Okay,
I put an email out to see at least who allowed dogs in their parks, and whether they had any process or specific rules. And most of them just came back and said it was really just they had to be on leash. But I didn't do any sort of organized research. I'm happy to if the board needs me to.
I mean, I guess. I can't remember whose position it was here. If you're walking on the city street with a child, village street with a child, you have to run the same risk you just described, which is that.
But does the city have liability?
I don't
In
know.
Matheson,
Yeah,
you would have liability.
Man, do you agree with that?
I'm not sure what his basis for saying that is. I mean, I haven't researched it, but off the top of my head, I don't see what the grounds for that.
Yeah, I didn't see it either, but I wanted to.
From being bit by someone's
How's the
dog?
village responsible if somebody gets bitten by a dog?
You're on village property.
But that's only if the village is negligent, right? So in other words, you can't just sue somebody because something happens in your presence. There has to be a basis,
yeah.
and that's negligence.
That's
What
the way-
did village
that's-
do that was negligent?
Unfortunately, that's the way lawsuits work. They go to the highest, the deepest pockets.
Well, and my other question is like, I'm still not understanding, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be belligerent, I just really don't understand. How does a dog wearing a tag that does not identify who the dog is help if a person is bitten and then they leave the park? You say there's no recourse. What is my recourse? So that's like, I bring my kid to the park, a dog comes over, bites, the owner goes, oh, sorry, and runs out, and we see that there's a tag on the dog.
At least you know your kid is not going to get rabies.
Right, but you said you weren't talking about that, you were talking about liability, so like.
Well,
how-
that's the
how
next
does it
step.
help me to know, like, I say to the police, I got bit by a dog, and it's like, okay, what about it? Well, it was a black dog or whatever, and it had a tag, but you don't have a number, it's not like a license that has a number on it that you know, oh. If you see the license, whatever, go back to the Greenberg town clerk, and she can tell you, oh, okay, that's this dog from this house.
Mhm.
We don't have that with the registration.
Well, we had information on the tags, but the initial reason for the tag was just to inform you that the dog is, registered and licensed and in,
And that's fine, but so let's not say that it does any kind of protecting of having a way of getting to the people, because it's not gonna help us find the culprit if something like that happens, right?
I mean, I also think.
Not
if
with an
your
open
child
park,
gets
no.
bit, you're gonna get whatever if you go to the doctor, I'm probably not gonna rely on that rabies shot, I'm gonna get whatever you get. What do kids
The
get?
10 shots, the 10 shots in the stomach.
Well, they do, I don't think they do that anymore.
No.
It's been
It's,
updated.
it's at least half that bad.
I don't-
that I-
I mean, I
They
would
have
probably
testing
not,
for-
I would also not take the chance, right? I'm gonna go to the doctor and
Yeah.
make sure that my kid is. Yeah. I wouldn't be so trusting. Of a green dot.
So that's the thinking of RPAC.
Okay. Maureen, do you wanna?
Maureen DePaoli, Superintendent. So I hear everybody, and I'd like to have this start. We were deciding maybe in October, because it'd give us some time to further plan. But if we don't do the registration, that would be okay. We would just have to figure out another plan. The other thing is, we did determine when you're walking down Matheson Park to the path to the left, that's where we were thinking of having this site, like out towards the water out in that area. This way it's not so close to the playground area. So we have to figure out a way, we're not gonna put caution tape up, obviously, but we'll have to figure out a way to determine that's the spot. And then we can put like a receptacle for that area, so that
The idea would be to let them walk around the park, not just one path or just.
I don't know, that basically, not by the playground, obviously, like by that pathway, I think that's too close, because the fence is like right there, the bushes are right there, I think it's better out towards the water area where that little divot used to be. I'm not sure about the picnic area, because if people are there barbecuing or whatever, I don't think that would be ideal. But we can discuss it, but I think we could say we're gonna do something. So that's really, we could start something in October and try like with our limited hours and see how it goes. And then we could change the hours.
And so I take it from what you just said, you are in favor of having the station with the bags and the.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I think the garbage is more important than most people.
Yeah.
Bring bags. It's good to have bags, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the key thing is the
Right.
garbage. When people
Yeah.
use their bags.
and there's so many out there, like I said, when I was in home, they had one park had a beautiful, it was nice, it was like a little area for the dogs, the park was beautiful. Everybody had their dogs on leashes, and they all had families, it was amazing, how they were all just like obeying. It was a big park too, it was a really big park, but.
My only thing would be that, like, I think having, no dogs in the play area makes sense. I think it's
Right.
harder to kind of like control, you know what I mean? Because people would
Yeah,
walk around,
Right,
And I don't really
right.
want to concentrate dogs. I don't know how many people will be there at the same time, but I think
yeah,
that would be harder to say, like, you can only walk here,
yeah,
versus.
out putting signage and
Yeah.
people directing,
So
so.
we're gonna tell people who are having parties and might have tables and foods that those people can't bring their dogs because they
Right.
can't.
Well, that's what we'd have to decide also.
Is that part of the permitting process?
Right.
We're asking to get permits.
Yeah, and we're also not gonna do it on the weekends during the busy hours.
Right, I mean,
So-
it's assuming that enforcement of that kind of stuff is gonna be impossible.
Yeah,
Say,
Well, that's
everyone
perhaps,
except the people who barbecue, anyone else can bring their dog.
but perhaps
But if
that's
it's
why
not-
you start with the hours
Right.
that were proposed, which is not picnic hours and probably not.
like
playground hours.
Saturday day,
Day.
Sunday day when we have,
Yeah, I understand it may be
No, I-
observed in the breach. I get that.
But
Yeah.
our response to that is those hours become hours that only residents are going to be using, because when the time that families come, in particular people with maximum use and people from out of town is from, is the other hours, not the morning
Yeah.
hours and not the
I-
evening hours.
right,
So now we're sort of allowing hours for residents, people who are in the know or whatever.
I don't dispute that. The question is, do we want to just open the floodgates at the outset, or do we want to do it in a sort of a measured fashion? Let's assume,
I'm
let's
gonna open
assume.
the floodgate.
Right, I think.
I'm gonna open the floodgates, and only because I'm not
Exactly what
concerned
we
that
were
we're
saying
opening the
about
floodgates. That was the same kind of discussion for opening the park. I'm
Well,
not concerned that
to-
we're opening the floodgates.
I use
Yeah.
a term that perhaps brings you back to that
no,
previous time,
no.
but my point was really more, do we do it at the same time that the parents are coming in with their kids and people are sitting at the picnic tables? Not that, oh my God, that
Yeah.
everyone will come in.
So,
with
so
their dog.
my answer to that is yes, because I actually agree with Larry about what he just said. I think if we want to have like a welcoming and, park that's open to everybody, I do think people come. I've had this experience actually where I told a friend to come meet me in the park. We were like picnicking in the park. And she like isn't from Irvington. And then she came with her dog and I was like, damn it, and like we had to like pack everything and go to my house. I do think people will bring, you know what I mean? Bring their dogs. I think families, all the families I know, the thing I hear all the time is like, I would love to bring my dog to the park, right? So they go to the park after school. They want to be able to bring the dog and walk with the dog while the kids play in the park. So I definitely am for, not having those limited hours. And I feel like my preference is try it the other way. And if it's too much, then try to like say, okay, we tried this, we need to phase this in, or change the rules rather than assuming, the worst will happen, or making rules for the worst rather than believing in kind of like this can work.
So if we, and this is for everybody, so if we come up with a set of rules that says no registration, open hours, and the other things that we discussed. Nobody would have a problem with me putting that in a mayor's letter to see how much that prompts people on the opposite side.
Right. Oh, no,
I got a family, I got kids, I don't want that.
Right, I mean, that was.
Because
my
I
other
think
point-
you
my other
may-
point
you may
was,
run
I don't know
into,
how many,
buzzsaw as a
Are-
consequence.
Do we have any, by the way, do we have any people on there, Larry, with comment? Is anyone raising their hand?
There's one person with their hand raised.
Okay.
Do you want
Sure,
to hear
Yeah.
from them?
yeah.
Oh,
I know.
or not? I mean,
All right.
That's all right, I don't care
We-
if they have something to say on this subject, I'll listen.
it's a confusion.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
gosh, by this time I have a lot to say. So,
First, you
Kingsland,
gotta tell us who you are.
oh, I'm sorry, it's Kay O'Keefe, and I am a long-term Irvington resident, and I have a dog. And the last time the park was open for dogs, all of that 15 minutes of time when they could go at 6 o'clock in the morning, I did register my dog. And I think the reason that people didn't go was because the hours were unreasonable. I never went because it was like early in the morning and I don't get up early in the morning. So that's the first thing. Second, Kingsland Park, which I believe is also a scenic Hudson Park, just like Matheson, allows dogs. And you do have to register your dog. Residents and non-residents register their dogs, and you bring a copy of your dog license with you that shows that the dog has had the rabies vaccine. Arlene, treating humans for rabies is not like taking your kid to the doctor and finding out with a blood test whether the kid has rabies. It isn't like that. It's a more complicated issue. I do believe that the dogs that come into the park should have the rabies vaccine. And you can, the rabies vaccine lasts for 3 years, so it's not such a big deal. I think that
Without registration.
But-
And I'm not arguing for registration, I'm just telling you. that-
I'm
This is
I'm
what-
suggesting
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that there be a registration. Because I think that it is important to know whether the dog has had the rabies vaccine. I do think that's important. As far as limiting the hours, the way that you're limiting them, that's very, very stringent. If you have already restricted an area where you can walk the leash dogs, and they're not allowed to go where the children are playing. So I think that you should be more flexible with the hours. So not just early in the morning and late in the evening when people might be having dinner. I think that you should have something more reasonable than that.
And if you want, there are other parks that do allow dogs. And if you want, I can do some other research. There's that other park on Dobbs Ferry Road. I don't think that they require anything for people to bring their dogs into the park. You know, this is like the pool. We've been struggling so hard to get to be able to, we forget the pool now, you know. We've been trying so hard to be able to walk our dogs in the park. Let us walk our dogs to the park. That's all. I think I've said enough.
Okay,
Anything-
thank you.
Just to trust that.
Anything I've forgotten, I'll send you in a letter.
All right,
I'm
thank
sure
you.
you will, Kay. I would say this about the having kids and the rabies, and no matter how hard the rabies, like whatever that is, I don't think that I'm going to trust the fact that the dog had a green tag, like whether that, like I can.
But it would be relevant to tell your doctor that if you knew it.
But you wouldn't know if that was like a, you know, still good, or if the dog, you know what I mean? Like, unless we were gonna then change the colors over years, like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't rely on that for my own child, right? Like, that's not how I'm gonna do my kid's medical care, the registration, that would make me very nervous.
Well, I understand, and
So
Yeah.
I think it's important to note, as you said, that this was put together by a group of dog owners. And I'm not sure that we've given an opportunity for people who might be on the other side to voice an opinion about this. So I think your idea of a mayor's letter
Yeah.
that said, this is what we're contemplating. We know you weren't watching our work session, because how many people are watching our work session?
3 online.
4 or 5,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
so there's 5 people.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can expect that we're gonna get some letters,
all right.
I think it's worthwhile, you know,
That
hearing
makes
that.
sense.
So what I'll do is I will try to draft something and let everybody look at it. First, to see if I've actually captured what people want. I think they don't want registration. They want much more expanded hours. I really want to do one park at a time. I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, but this is gonna be, forgive me for saying this, but it's gonna be like a discussion like with the deer. There's gonna be polarization on both sides. And yeah, well, I'd like to be wrong. Believe me, I'd like to be wrong, but there will come a time when we decide if I'm not wrong, this isn't worth the fight. And I don't want to get to that.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to start a little more restrictively, but
I think Arlene had a good point. It's not like we're not the first park in the country to let dogs in. I mean,
I
it's been
understand.
done before and
Yep.
without disastrous effects. So we're not treading new water.
yeah,
And I think having dogs
that's
on the
right.
leash does a lot of work. Like if the dogs were
That's the
just
most important.
running around, then I would be more.
I don't,
Absolutely.
I think that is absolutely true. The only distinction I would make here is that you've had a park for, I don't know how many decades that functioned a certain way. And we did, I give you guys credit, I wasn't on the board, you opened it up to more people. Oh, all right.
I was on the other
All right,
side.
I'll look at this side.
The other side.
And you opened up to more people, and now we're making another. It's a relatively radical change. I understand that it happens all around in other parks, but the way people are used to using the park, this isn't necessarily consistent with it. That's the only reason for I'm being cautious about it. It's not because I'm afraid that it's going to be any different than any other park, but I don't want to. I don't want to create a problem. So.
What is it? Armageddon with dog. and
Yes.
cat. I couldn't make that work in. I couldn't make that work. Thank you.
Dogmageddon.
There you go.
All right.
Okay.
I think that's enough about dogs.
We beat that dog to death.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. I'm sorry, I didn't know your dog.
Thank you.
Yeah, he did. My poor baby. He's almost 18.
All right.
Didn't make that
So
far.
I will write something up. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to Rick. I'll send it to everybody on this board. And we'll see where we are. And thankfully it's not October yet, so we still have time to fine tune this. All right, next up.
Thanks to Kent for his work.
Yes, yeah, and yes, I agree with you. And he's traveling, or he probably would have been here. Next up is sort of an update on the facilities planning committee and its progress. Around July 1, they presented a brief that describe their planned approach to sort of facilities capital planning. For those who may be watching this later, that's basically deciding what we're going to do with the various village properties and how we're going to modernize and deal with the various functions that the village has to perform using the properties we have. And then as part of that brief, they had a list of properties. And the chair people, Mike Aziz and Arthur Shaban, met with Larry Schopfer, Ed Marin, and me to go through the list of properties. And I'm pretty sure this is the papers I at least sent to all of you. And what we did was tell them, okay, here's why something might not work. For example, you cannot build next to the water tower. Yes, there's property there, but you can't use it for this particular purpose. So some properties are probably eliminated, or at least they're aware of the significant limitations. There were a few others that we actually suggested. When I say we, it's actually Ed and Larry, but because they have much better knowledge than I did, but that were added to their list. And the next step, there are two next steps, actually. One is that we will, in September, try to schedule some sort of, I'll call it an operational review, where either the two chairs or the whole committee, if that's how they choose to do it, will tour Village Hall, we'll go to the fire department, we'll go to DPW, we'll go to the rec building, understand, and anything else I'm leaving out, and understand what are the functions that are performed there and what's a necessity, what might not be required. Or is there a possibility of doing it differently? We're not trying to do an exhaustive study. It just doesn't make sense to just have a list of properties and not understand the functions that need to be performed by the village if what you're trying to do is come up with a long-term plan for how we allocate capital towards our facilities. The other thing that's going to happen at roughly the same time is that there are other communities that have put together capital plans and they've used outside consultants. We will probably talk with the outside consultants that have done that work. There was one in Ossining. And in fact, I think the mayor of Ossining works in Irvington, so we may ask the mayor to join us. All of the things I just described, you folks are welcome to come along. We'll have to figure out if it's considered a board meeting or not. Yeah, we'll figure it out. If you know, I'm not sure I want to invite the entire public to tour Village Hall while we're trying to just understand the functions, but we'll see what we can do. If it's a limited number that's going along, then I'll have to write it up or we'll have a meeting and go
most
through
of
it.
us have toured most of these.
Yeah,
places, so-
understood. And then the next step would be for the facilities planning committee to come and sort of tell us what they have found.
So that just says
Of
after
course.
they've done that tour, then what do they do? Do they do anything after that tour and before they come to us?
Well, other than the sort of meeting with the outside experts, because one of the things they have proposed, you probably saw it in their write-up, is what you really need is a consultant to manage the process. And before I go and hire a consultant, I want to know, because they're also saying they would help to manage the consultants. I want to know that they have done, I won't say an exhaustive study, but and have a very good understanding of properties available, functions required to be performed. Because if we are going to use anybody else and pay anybody else to do any work, I want to be able to hand them something that says, here's the properties, here's the functions. Don't just repeat back to me what I just told you. I want you to explain to me what function you are going to perform. Because otherwise, I would rather be doing this in-house in a different way than was done before. Because actually, I'm not going to critique anything that was done before, but part of the function of a consultant or even a committee, if we're using them, is the PR outreach as well. So I can't tell you where this goes, in its final iteration. It's more, I want to hear from them what they've learned and hear from them how they think we can manage the process going forward. It's probably gonna take a year or so to, if not more, to decide how are we gonna spend our money, where are we gonna spend our money? You know, Arlene made the point actually before the meeting, if they are having actual meetings that, you know, maybe we'd like to be able to sit in. No problem asking them that. My impression so far, they've done, you know, like a couple of Zoom sessions. And that the chairs have done, I mean, and I may be wrong, I apologize to anybody who's on the committee if I'm misstating it, but that the chairs have done a lot of the legwork and writing things up.
I mean, I think it's important to have transparency on that process, right? Like, I think that was like a big issue for people, so, I think it's important to know how they're operating also, because it's been some
That's fair.
time since, you know, we started this, so where we are now, it's been quite some time,
Yeah.
and I don't think, even as a trustee, I don't have any good sense of
Well, I think
what
they
they've been
would,
doing.
I think they would come in right now to
Yeah.
do a presentation, but I kind of suggested to them, shouldn't you know about the operating side of this before you come in? If you want them to come in before then, they might do it.
No, it's not about them coming
Yeah.
in before. It's sort of understanding, for example, even from them, like where their process is, how they are along. If it's just them meeting, is the committee meeting, right? So that we don't get out like 6 months and it's like, well, it's just really, they've had a hard time, which sometimes happens, you know, convening the committee and it's really them moving along. I think we should have a good understanding of that.
Okay. So the two sort of next steps that I described, I'm expecting to happen in September because we got some dates that, you know, I'll share that with everybody.
I mean, if they're coming to present in September, like, I think that's, you know, that's obviously right around the corner. So
Yeah,
it's
I
part of
get it,
Yeah.
I get it, but it's a very good point. We shouldn't make, if it was, I hate to describe it as a mistake, but if it was a mistake that people, even though you had multiple meetings and I watched and I understood what you were doing, if the community felt like they didn't see it all happening, I'd rather be pushing it out there and waving it around.
Correct. But that's the thing we learned, right? People felt like they didn't know enough about what was happening.
Yep. Okay. Next up here. Checks over 25,000, Borelli Mechanical for HVAC, $84,001.88. Morabito Electric, electrical labor and maintenance repair for theater HVAC, $28,140. Are we still on target to try to sort of wrap this up by end of September, beginning of October?
Yes.
I'll take it from anybody.
Today's engineering meeting, October 1st was still the date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Good. All right. And Larry, do I need a motion or just an announcement?
announcement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mitch. Our parliamentarian. So we are announcing a public hearing to consider a local law amending the village code to permit bow hunting in limited circumstances, which will be held Monday, September 16th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in Village Hall. I think there is a description, but it's bow hunting if hired by the village for specific properties and times. Okay, correspondence, or did I? Yes, okay. Oops, I missed one of the $25,000 checks, right? I didn't say those guys contracting for Memorial Park dugout project, $36,255 and 13 cents. And that project, I'm assuming also is going to finish in maybe September, October, or we're getting near the end of that, Larry, or maybe.
That one's almost done. I think
Okay.
they have couple more paving things and a fence, but
Okay,
it's close.
thank you. Okay, Lisa again, am I pronouncing it right? Thank you. Dear Mayor and Board of Trustees, thank you so much for the action you recently took to invest in greater sustainability for Irvington and to help address climate impacts in a time when environmental protections at the federal level are being eroded. It's more important than ever for municipalities to lead the way and to do everything we can at every level to address the these existentially important issues for ourselves, for the natural world, and for future generations. Thank you for your leadership and commitment. Ilya Gofsta, dear esteemed members of the Irvington Board. I am a current resident of 1 Parkside Way. I'm writing to propose a new sidewalk be built along Sycamore, Parkside Way, and a small portion of Harriman Road. Specifically, the sidewalk would run along the north side of Sycamore, and the north side of Parkside, and the north side of Harriman between Hillside Terrace and Dunham Place. Please see the attached file for visual representation of the proposal. 3 benefits: child safety, reducing congestion as it encourages people to walk, and green impact and health. The person acknowledges they're not a civil engineer, but it seems like a technically feasible project. And they'd be eager to work with the board to make this possible. I guess my response to that is, I would defer this to DPW because they have to consider competing demands, and this is a capital expenditure that would have to be part of the capital budget probably for next year. I think I'd also point out to this person that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to install a sidewalk would mean that we are taking property from people who live along that right of way, if you will, because we're not going to take part of the road to create the sidewalk. So the fact the neighbors that he spoke with were in agreement, they might feel differently if you told them we're going to take whatever the space is, 6, 8, 10 feet of their front yard.
Anyway, no other sidewalks in that neighborhood.
Correct. Yeah, and I use it for a lot of biking and a lot of running, and I have not had problems. I think it helps a lot that Parkside Way is now one way. You have less sort of a squeeze. Anyway, Chris Lando, dear Mayor and trustees, I saw in a recent set of minutes comments on a traffic study proposal. I noticed the study doesn't include the intersection of Ardsley Avenue and Broadway. I hope it can be amended to include the intersection. It's a complex and congested intersection. And he talks about witnessing 3 separate car accidents. And it's an extremely dangerous intersection. States repeatedly declined to remedy the traffic pattern. I hope the data from the traffic study would help. In short, they're encouraging that it be added to the study. And he asked for an introduction to the Irvington Neighbors Against Traffic, which we provided. And my answer was that the state controls this road and the village cannot, I mean, we can make suggestions, but we cannot make changes to the road.
The traffic study that he's referring to.
Oh, yes, thank you, forgive me. That was also mentioned. Yes, the traffic study has already been completed. We did a traffic study as a baseline for future development, and the traffic study that he was referring to is the one that's being used by the planning board for the current proposal for 76 North Broadway, I think it is. Yes, thank you. Which we also don't control. Correct. Okay. This is from Carly Blackman. Mayor Siegel, Irvington trustees, good afternoon. I noticed in your newest deer alert, you referred to retaining a bow hunter to manage the Irvington deer population. This is of course incorrect. I'm a published writer. I have an agent who is managing the sale of my screenplay. Your bow hunter isn't managing deer. I don't believe Irvington wants to mislead its citizens. Please don't codify euphemisms by printing up what is Irvington's upcoming lethal activity toward wildlife. It's what people ask for their own issues as well. Please consider treating all your citizens and visitors with respect, and consider treating your wildlife residents with kindness instead of killing, while urging your citizens to do the same. Thank you in advance for maintaining contemporary humane standards in Westchester and beyond. Thank you for the dear members of the Irvington. We did this one already, so I can skip over that. That was the dog Irvington books. Okay, Gail Weiler's email to the mayor and trustees. I'd like to call your attention to a matter of deep concern to us, our request to return the first floor of our building back to residential as it was for some 100 years prior to our purchase 23 years ago. She describes a lot of the work that they've done, and they've sort of and they've received compliments, and the financial complexities of doing that. They in our very minor way, we feel our building reflects the sentiment expressed in a recent New York Times article extolling Joseph Lombardi, owner of the Octagon House, where he was able to purchase commercial buildings cheaply in New York City and convert them to residential early in his career. He also sees this happening now in New York City. Furthermore, while we have pursued several avenues for medical or dental usage, all failed as the space was deemed too small and not connected to other like facilities. Technically, after complying with all the space necessary to be ADA compliant, it was too small for our office also, but because we had already committed all our resources, we had to make do with less treatment rooms, et cetera, and make it work. And they were encouraged to visit 12 Main. And I think this is the crux of the letter. We're not a management company letting our building deteriorate for profit-only investment. Our purchase was a pinch me moment of scraping together funds to move the practice. We want to appeal to you to make an exception to recent zoning change, which to date has cost in excess of $10,000, not including any lost rental income for over a year. And going forward, we're facing upwards of $20,000. So I guess the first point I would make is there is no recent zoning change that I'm aware of. And the village attorneys advised me it was probably 15 years plus for any relevant change to this particular property. So it may well have been that they purchased it under the circumstances that they find are creating difficulties now. I guess if Gail Weiler wants to reach out to me and try to explain exactly what she meant by recent zoning changes, I'd be happy to listen. But I'm not sure what I can do with this at this moment, since the zoning provides, correct me if I'm wrong, for commercial level, first level, and residential above that in the business district. And I don't know that there are other exceptions to that. I don't think there are.
I don't know what you mean by exception.
What I mean is the rule has been enforced.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up. Also from Chris Lando, I think this is the last piece of correspondence. The 8/14 meeting agenda includes a proposal to install solar panels and battery power systems at the senior center, including an attractive matching program that will defray half the cost of the installation. So hoping to get information on the project. Below are a few questions and considerations. Basically asked, what's the I'm going to summarize the questions because these are more appropriately addressed at a later time, but what's the expected reduction in senior centers electricity usage? What's the age of the roof and how does its expected life compare with life of solar panels? How does the project cost split between roof mounted and carport solar? Costs, what are the costs associated with battery backup system? If the senior center is needed for emergency heating or cooling, have we done an analysis on the battery backup versus natural gas or diesel generator? So before we make a final decision, I hope we considering in conjunction the financial impact and environmental matters. So my response was, what you are looking at in today's agenda is a approval of a grant application. It is not approval of a final project. When we get the grant application, we will then consider the appropriate and relevant details of the project itself. And questions like those that were asked are, some of them anyway, are will be relevant to the analysis that'll be done when we presumably get, if we get the grant, we do engineering drawings and come up with a final plan. Is that correct, Larry? Okay.
Yeah, yes, it is. And the application, I think we'll talk about it shortly, but the application is not complete at this point, but this is the last meeting before the application is due in early September. So,
got it.
so we will have a lot of the answers that were being asked of you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's the end of correspondence. Public comment, anybody else? Yeah.
Yes.
Should we all come up together?
Hi, I'm Judy Brazon. I've lived in Irvington for 33 years and I own a business that has been on Main Street for 8 years. This morning I overheard the building inspector basically threatening one of the merchants. And it was very disconcerting to me as a merchant, as a human being, as when I moved the business here, my understanding and my feeling, even I have to say, Ed Marin has been very helpful to me at different times. That businesses, the village was encouraging the buildings department, everyone to really help the businesses because we didn't have very many for many years. This is absolutely outrageous what has been happening to it's my neighbor, the new coffee shop, which is bringing such color, business, traffic into Irvington, where the hardware store says that they find people coming in every day. They just happen to be there and like, oh, I need a light bulb. Oh, look at the beautiful hardware in the store in the window there. Down at the Red Hat, they said there was one evening when they had never seen so many Dominicans in their life and that they filled up the restaurant. That's not the point. What's been happening is my landlord, he doesn't like change. And so he's been frightened and he's called the police and he's gotten the buildings department involved. And it's their reaction to his complaint that needs to stop.
Okay, the good news is I got something in writing from somebody who was also there. And I've already asked the village administrator to follow up and see what happened. I understand the facts as they were given to me in this email and as you're giving them. I also want to hear from the other side. To be correct, it wasn't Ed Marin, it was somebody who works for Ed Marin, yes.
It was Jim.
Got it, okay. So my short answer to you is we're gonna follow up and find out what happened and why. Clearly, they have a responsibility to respond to complaints, but not in a way that is abusive or rude. Well, I don't want to use, I'll leave it at that. So we're aware of it and I appreciate that you're giving it to us a second time. And we know it has to be addressed.
I do want to say that it's more than that, because the police had been called a couple of times and they did respond. I think they have to respond, even if it's something absurd. That seems to have quieted right now. I don't know. I don't know, because every week I think that this is over with. Hector's been very, responsible and has let, John know when he's going to have a barbecue and he's going to do something, been very respectful. And yet these things are happening where, well, you know what he said. He's going to police their backyard. The backyard belongs to the Rileys, and they are fine with both their tenants. And you can't tell whether it's the lady upstairs that she has her family there, or it's Hector's family or his employees. But there's no mayhem going on here. I'm witness to everything that happens. I'm right there. Thank you.
But the good news is that I'm guessing a majority of us, if not all of us, frequent the store. And I've actually been there when the police have come down. So I understand. Obviously, I can't tell you what the outcome is going to be because I don't know yet. But we're aware of it and we know it's a problem. Yeah, you could, I mean, Larry can, I assume you would not have a problem if the village administrator wanted to speak to you.
Oh, no, no,
Okay.
we have spoken and Larry's been very helpful,
Okay. Got it.
not on this
Did you wanna-
subject.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Judy and I were walking together. I was with Hector. He's a close friend of mine.
Yeah.
Went on a morning run. I just happened to be home today. And I did want to just clarify that the statement from the buildings department was that Hector was not allowed to have his mother or brother allowed on the property, and that Jim was taking his personal initiative to police the area. He did not say specifically police, but to check multiple times by walking onto the property, into the back, and asking whoever's back there if they are an employee. He said he's done this already, and that if they are not, he will fine him. He's not the landlord. And also, again, I think I came here to discuss this, and I'm very passionate about dogs, so I came up earlier, but again, I'm Keith Greenbaum. I'm a photographer. I have a commercial property at the top of the hill, and I want to ensure that my interests, I'm going to be looking for a tenant, that my tenant won't be, facing the same kind of behavior.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, but
It's okay.
he just raised something. I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but Hector has an amazing following. He has had NBC here today. Univision was here all afternoon. They're international. The media attention that he gets and that brings all these people to us is also the kind of media attention that if this stuff doesn't stop, it's going to come out and it's going to hurt all of us.
Yeah, I think enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Larry, can you make sure to follow up with them about this?
Yes, of course. The mayor spoke to me about it today.
Yeah, I did. This afternoon, when I got the email, I sent it to them. I said, Larry,
Okay.
you got it.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
know.
no, of course, I didn't send it to everybody. I just took care of it.
I'm happy to discuss. it.
Yeah, it's fine.
And thank you, by the way, to both of you for taking the time and
Yep.
waiting and speaking out, and I think that's really admirable.
Thank you.
Okay. Consent agenda. I'm only gonna make two observations. One, the salary modification that you see in 9D was originally, I think it went 61,115 to 64,935. And I guess the largest budget transfer and modification was the surplus going to the capital fund, right? 2.367 million.
Yes,
something
which
like
is
that.
what was adopted in the capital budget. It's just the entry to record it.
Got it. So a motion to adopt the consent agenda,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, approval of a CDBG grant application to fund the installation of solar panels and a battery storage system at Irvington Senior Center. Are you already on the right page?
Oh, yeah, I think that it's 36 in the document.
Got it.
There's a 10 written on top right hand corner that helps. Probably not.
See here. Got it. Thank you. Okay. I think we just talked about this a little bit, Larry. Do you want to give a little bit of color or?
Well, there's not too much more to it. There's panels that we're planning for installation on the roof area of the senior center. And also the construction of a canopy over just a small portion of the parking lot adjacent to the senior center, directly to the north of the senior center. And then in addition to that, the battery storage, which is much needed, as we've been told. So there's a little synopsis attached to the agenda about the project and what it would yield in terms of kilowatt hours, et cetera. I have to be honest, I'm not an expert in all that, so we rely on the experts at Sustainable Westchester for this information. They did kind of the pro forma for this property.
Anybody have questions? If not, I'll do I'm offering the following motion. Whereas the Village of Irvington is applying for a community development block grant for the senior center solar installation project. Whereas the cost of the project net of incentives and credits is estimated at $268,557. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees is hereby endorse an application for $134,278 to the Westchester Urban County Consortium Community Development Block Grant Program. And upon the funding of said amount commits to provide $134,279 in matching funds and authorizes the village administrator to execute said agreement. You would suggest that I ask the questions after, in a prior meeting, after the resolution. Since I asked before, I'm gonna skip it this time, but I will go back to what, because it was a good idea. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You mean comments?
Comments,
Yeah,
or comments or questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Approval of consultant agreement with Color Tone Audio Visual. This is to prepare, I assume the presentation, the audio visual in this room. Am I right? Or?
Yes. Yes, it's to redo everything. Everything is 10+ years old, which is ancient in technology terms.
Got it.
So we need someone to put together a specification. It's not going to be a tremendously large document, but at least to select equipment, identify the equipment, and put a bid out. Help us put a bid out, and that's all of this. It's a fairly small contract.
Yeah.
In dollars, not in pages.
Yeah. Very true.
It's a very long contract for a very
True.
small amount of money.
All right, I'm offering the following motion: resolve to approve the consultant agreement with Color Tone Audio Visual for the consultation and design services for the Irvington Village Hall Meeting Room project, and authorize the village administrator to execute said agreements. Any comments, questions? If not, I'll take a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Okay, you are indispensable, you were right. Okay, this is approval of consultant agreement with Langen Engineering. And this is to look at the West Main Street bulkhead leaks. We've been having discussions with the folks who own the property down there, and the West Main Street is ours, so we will have to work out some arrangement in terms of the repairs, but we want to start by having an engineer look at why it's leaking through the bulkhead. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and the sinkhole that's developed in West Main Street, it's adjacent to the bulkhead, the metal bulkhead that's there. So that there's drainage that's owned by the village underneath that, but the bulkhead was not installed by the village. It was installed by Bridge Street Properties. And so the cause of that sinkhole, while we could just simply fill it in and fix it temporarily, the cause really needs to be found, and who's responsible for that needs to be figured out as well, whether it's a village issue, whether it's a Bridge Street issue, or some sort of a shared issue.
Where is the sinkhole?
At the
Literally,
very
if you go to
end, at the end of West
Yes.
Main Street, right at where the steel bulkhead is. There's probably a plate over it, or some sort of protection, but there's a sinkhole there that's developed.
By hand, do you mean like by Red Hat?
Yeah, I mean, it's as far out as Red Hat. Red Hat's further in, but it's.
To be out of the building, and you just keep going straight.
Oh,
Big building.
heading out towards Scenic Hudson Park.
No, it's
No.
just
If you followed Main Street down
Right.
and crossed the tracks,
Yeah.
it keeps on going, and where
Right.
Main Street hits the bulkhead, that's where the leak is.
Okay.
You know, the
Or
street in front of Eileen Fisher, the Eileen Fisher.
Yeah.
store, you have to keep going
So the
end.
parking lot's to your right. and
Yes.
things
Yeah,
to your
so
left.
it's right by the Red Hat. I mean, the Red Hat's a little.
Yes, it's as far out as.
On the street.
Yes, gotcha.
Okay, I'm offering the following resolution. Resolve to approve the consultant agreement with Langen Engineering Environmental Surveying landscape architecture and geology DPC for professional engineering services for the bulkhead at the end of West Main Street and authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Any questions, comments? Then I'll take a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Um. Next is approval of consultant agreement with Stephen Acosta PE, which is to prepare theater drawings, which I think probably have already been prepared. Would that be a correct statement? Or he's worked on or?
Yeah,
No?
well, so Steve Costa has been consulting on the project since the beginning of the year. We actually expected that he was working for PTG, Pacific Transglobal, during that time, and that we would be billed for his time through PTG. And it turns out that PTG didn't hire him, and he was expecting to work for the village. So we're literally scrambling 8 months later to put a contract in place so that he can get paid. Either way,
And
we were paying him, but he's been doing this work. He hasn't been paid since the beginning of January.
So do we have an idea for, with regard to what it's going, how much we owe him for the work that he's probably been doing?
Yes. Yes, we
Okay.
do. We owe him about, I think, 13,500 right now. There'll probably be
Got
a
it.
couple more thousand by the time this project's over, although most of the structural work is taken care of. He's consulting on some of the sprinkler head locations and some of the more detailed work, but the bulk of his work is done.
Yeah,
Can I just ask why, like this is coming up 8 months into him doing this work? Like, why didn't he like raise his hand and say like, I'm not being paid? Just unusual.
It's unusual. Yeah, I don't have an explanation for that. He never tried to bill anyone, and when he did, PTG said, wait a minute, you're not working for us. And it happened 8 months later. I don't have an explanation.
and the reason I asked about the dollar amount is the way it's phrased, it's $250 an hour. Otherwise, I would have said, hey, can we write some in here that says that we get notice every once, whenever he's gonna run up another $5,000, but I think you've just told me most of the work is done, so I'm not gonna push for any kind of a change.
But I mean, I'm
Right.
assuming there was like a budget for that amount or, I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is. It's part of it. This is not an add-on to the project. We knew about this. It was either going to be billed through PTG or it was going to be billed directly, and it apparently is being billed directly. So, but this is not a new budget item for the project.
Okay. I'm offering the following resolution: resolved to approve the consultant agreement with Stephen Acosta PE for professional engineering services for the Town Hall Theater and authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Comments or questions? Anybody? I'll take a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is approval of a grant agreement with the New York State Housing Trust. It relates to Barney Brook. It's a 2-year grant for $200,000. It's to study the flooding that's there. Is that correct? You want to give
Yes.
more detail?
Yeah, sure. So this is a grant that we were awarded. It was originally for technical assistance. So the state was going to go and hire a consultant to perform flooding analysis of the Barney Brook area. And this is the area from essentially from Buckout Street west along Barney Brook. So Buckout, Astor, under the railroad tracks, over underneath Bridge Street properties and out to the Hudson. So it's a very large culvert that is going to be needed there. The grant application was going to provide us with the data and information that we would need to actually prepare a grant application that would be competitive on the federal level with most likely FEMA, although there could be other sources. It's a very large project. As we've talked about, it's probably an $8 million project at the end of the day. The only way that it's ever going to get built is if there's some significant level of outside funding for a village of our size. So we're actually getting a grant to help us prepare a grant application. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but it's that big of a project that we're, we're that far back in the process. The state originally said technical assistance. We were not going to be contracting with any engineers. The state was going to do that, and the state turned around and said, this format doesn't really work for us. What if we just give you the $200,000 and you contract with the engineer or engineers to prepare these applications? And we're not going to turn that down, in my opinion.
Okay. I offer the following resolution: resolve to approve an agreement with the New York State Housing Trust Fund for a resiliency planning project related to Barney Brook, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Questions or comments?
So just quickly, Larry, so this is sort of the final last part of Barney Brook before it goes into the Hudson.
Yes, it's from the point where it goes essentially underground, so under Buckout Street, under the DPW, under the railroad tracks, and on Bridge Street properties and out to the Hudson. That culvert is severely undersized, and I mean, we've all seen the flooding that's happened down there over the years. And
So all the work that we've been doing to ease Barney Brook from the top of Barney Brook all the way to there sort of exacerbates the problem if that culvert is insufficient.
Yes, it can. It can, but this project is of such a scale that if you waited for this to get done, you'd never do anything else in the village, virtually.
Okay.
So but this is, again, this is an important project. I'd like to say it'll be done in a couple of years. I don't think so, but if you have a good application, a good competitive application prepared, you might be able to make some progress on it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I also want to
Approval.
mention, I also want to thank Mary Ann for going through that agreement. It's
So
yeah.
it's pages and pages, and the vast majority of it probably doesn't apply because they're typically for housing projects. They use the same agreement, I think. But anyway, thank you, Mary Ann, for doing that.
All right. Next up is approval of financial advisory services agreement with Capital Markets Advisors LLC. This is in connection with our bond financing. I had asked a couple of questions, but I'm satisfied that there are no relevant legal issues. In particular, some disclosure they had to do with contingent fees, and we are not using a contingent fee, correct? We're using a retainer.
Going with the retainer.
So
option.
it's not even relevant for disclosure that they have to deal with. So the resolution I'm going to offer is resolved to approve the agreement with Capital Markets Advisors LLC for financial advisory services, selecting the retainer option, and authorizing a village clerk treasurer to execute said agreement. Questions or comments? I'll take a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up is approval of agreement for landscape maintenance at O'Hara Nature Center. There is an existing agreement with what is it, Stormport LLC, that can be extended. And this, probably should have raised this when Maureen was here, but this is helping to cover some of the things that CJ might have done, and to backstop as we go along. So this is adding half a day of work for 41 weeks. The resolution is resolved that the village administrator is authorized to extend the contract for landscape maintenance at the O'Hara Nature Center number 202324 with Stormport LLC for an additional year, June 1, 24 to May 31, 25, and to add 1/2 day of work for 41 weeks from August 24 to June 25 at an hourly rate of $80. Any questions or comments? I'll take. Yeah, go ahead.
when I was reading this, I guess, obviously he would be available. I mean, it just so the contract is, there's also the ability for her to use him more if she needs him.
Yeah,
But
it's
he
a
would give it
standard
back,
consult,
yeah.
it's not attached, but it's a standard consulting agreement that had an option to extend it another year. So what you're really doing is taking this little proposal and attaching it, you know, as an addendum to it. I don't know if anybody else, Larry, or Katie, have anything to add, but I know that's the fucking Maureen. So I will take a second if there's no other questions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Request to temporarily extend a special permit for adaptive reuse of an historic building, 45 West Clinton Avenue. It's the Octagon House. I guess they're still addressing the old permit. Or old building permit, I guess it was, right? There's something pending.
What's a special permit?
Spe-
What kind of special permits out,
Well-
but-
Well, this is for their usage, but the reason we're extending this, I'm assuming, is because they haven't finished the work they had to do. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the resolution is resolved to temporarily extend the special permit for adaptive reuse of an historic building, 45 West Clinton Avenue until October 15, 2024. Questions or comments?
Yeah, so they have a similar, like the Illinois, that's right? So what, is it coming to an end? Like, they're not gonna renew it?
I think they're changing it. Isn't it that they wanted to use it for further purposes than what it is now? And in order to do that, they had to,
Upgrade certain things.
yeah.
And they had actually presented, I don't know, I want to say 5 months ago or something to us, something that said, you know, we want to have more people, we want to expand this a little bit. But they had pending work that they hadn't finished. So they haven't finished the work.
So they wanna operate under the old special permit while they're doing this work, and then
Correct.
once the work is complete, they're gonna apply for a new special permit on new terms.
Cool. I think that's correct.
That sounds right, yeah.
Okay,
Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, bond resolutions. To implement the 2024 capital budget. They are pretty similar. How would you like to do this? I mean, we could just give you the dollar amounts, which we've already approved. And then, I don't know if everybody has, well,
Yeah, we could do one at a time. The reason there's 4 of them is they have to get broken out
Different
by the
lifetime?
period of
Yeah.
probable usefulness of
Yeah.
the project, because we can't borrow for longer than the useful life. So it gets broken out by project. So it's the 10-year resolution, and then 20, then 30, and then 40.
so the first one is $320,000 for the HVAC Village Theater.
Yes.
And we're issuing serial bonds. Let's see, we talked about the purpose, and then you referenced the maturity of 10 years.
That's probably all you need to cover.
Yeah.
And then run through these, because obviously there's pages for each one.
Thank
Can
you.
we do one vote for all 4 bond resolutions?
Do them separate, please.
Well, they're all separate.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
theoretically, I could, but.
Yep.
uh,
But you can identify them simply by saying the dollar amount and the projects and the number of years, and that identifies
it.
the resolution for purposes of this.
So I'm making a motion to adopt the bond resolution for the 320,000 aggregate principal amount bonds to finance the cost of the acquisition, construction, and reconstruction of HVAC improvements to the Village Theater. Do I have
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'll do this as a motion, then I'll let people ask questions. Making a motion to authorize the issuance of up to 2,464,000 aggregate principal amount serial bonds in the Village of Irvington to finance the costs of the acquisition, construction, and reconstruction of culvert improvements. And this one is Harriman.
It's 2 projects. It was, I have them here.
And it's, yeah, it's a 20-year project.
It's Harriman and West Sunnyside Lane
Got it.
culverts.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adopt the bond resolution authorizing the issuance of up to 70,000 aggregate principal amount serial bonds of the Village of Irvington to finance the cost of the acquisition, construction, and reconstruction of improvements to the Irvington Reservoir Dam. And this has 30 years. Thank you. And this is for mostly study purposes, correct, Larry, or is this actual work?
Part study, part actual work. The spillway, there are going to be modifications to the spillway. It's probably about 50-50 actually of this amount.
Okay. Got it. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
That's okay. So if we borrow $70,000, I mean, it's a smaller amount, and I know that you can, because of the type of project, borrow for longer. Would we borrow $70,000 for 30 years? Or would we?
I mean, that's usually like a discussion we'll have with the advisors, and depends if we do a note or a bond, so that all kind of gets taken into account at that time.
And
The
assuming.
the
interest rates also-
maximum is 30, so we can't borrow more than that, but we can borrow less than that.
It's up to
Up
30.
to
Up
2 years.
to.
I just, that amount of money, like $70,000 for 30 years just seems like
Well,
not.
but am I correct that the consultants or the underwriters will package these together? Not that they're all one sale, but that you, if your concern is like the cost per unit, it's crazy to do it for 70,000, but there is an efficiency of scale here, correct?
Everything.
Yeah,
is
so
packaged.
we have about 7.7 million of existing notes out now, and then this 3.3 million is getting added on. So all of that'll kind of get packaged together when we go to bond, and it'll be one big
So that's
bond.
that's sort of the answer
Yeah.
to your question.
Yeah.
Why does, this is crazy.
I'm like, ooh,
Yeah,
that would drive me bananas.
yes. Okay,
Collection.
that's great. A bond resolution to authorize the issuance of up to 485,000 aggregate principal amount serial bonds of the Village of Irvington to finance the cost of the acquisition, construction, and reconstruction of improvements to the Irvington water system. And it is up to 40 years, probably usefulness of the project is 40 years. That's the motion. Are there any questions or comments? If not, I'll take a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think that was it for the bonds.
Mhm.
So next up is Artie Semetis resigned from the ZBA, and Charlie Flock is an alternate, so we are moving him up as a member. So my motion is resolved to appoint the following as a member to the Irvington Zoning Board of Appeals with a term to expire December 2025. Charles Flock, member. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public comment. Anybody online?
Do you want to do the reports of board
Yeah, I'm gonna-
and
I'm
standing
Oh,
committees
does that
first?
normally come before or after? Oh, before.
Public comment.
Sorry.
You know why it's not John's fault? It's not in the agenda.
No,
for
no.
some reason.
Yeah, but I wrote it down. I just wrote it down as afterwards because I noticed it when we were putting it together. So it's,
Yeah,
it's double secret reports. So if we want, why don't you want to start at that end? Lonnie?
Yeah, no report.
Okay.
We have a number of program registrations, all information for all programs are listed on Community Pass accessible at register.capturepoint.com/Village of Irvington. Online registration is now open for the following programs: flag football, 1st to 7th grade, soccer clinics, pre-K to 2nd grade, kickball, 3rd to 5th grade, ultimate frisbee, 6th to 8th grade, Lego workshops, K through 2nd grade, art classes, K through 2nd grade, Registration opens on September sixth for ballet, dance, cooking, toddler programs, adult dance, and Friday night fun. Today was the Irvington Family Tennis Day, co-sponsored by USTA. That happened this morning. Oktoberfest, as a reminder, will take place on September 28th in Matheson Park, featuring live music, food trucks, and kids zone. And of interest, Dick's Sporting Goods is offering an Irvington Recreation 20% off shop event Friday, August 23rd through Sunday, August 25th. You must present a coupon which is available on the village website under the recreation tab.
Thank you. I'm gonna steal a little bit of your fire, Arlene, you're DPW, right?
Yes.
Because I got an email from Stephen Hollowell, who said, we called the police this morning after a neighbor's tree snapped and landed in the street. Hendrick North, within 10 minutes, the village crew was here, cut it up and took it away. Fantastic response. And he included some photos here. So it looks like quite the effort to try to get it removed, but yeah, Larry, if you get the chance, and I'll try to do it too, just send an email to Greg and the folks who did it.
So I have a report from Greg, and they responded and removed down trees from Harriman and Richmond, and also tree limbs at South Broadway, and tree limbs from multiple locations during Tropical Storm Debbie. And I'm not gonna go through all the things. It's a long list of, and we all know all the things that they do all the time.
And they're
but-
getting compliments on top of that.
Yes, but I do want to say they commenced the project to inventory and reorganize village supplies at the Village of Irvington transfer station located at 170 Mountain. They registered and received confirmation for the solid waste permit at 170 Mountain Road, which will expire in 2029, July 2029. Registered and received confirmation for petroleum bulk storage / dispensing site permit at DPW and Irvington Firehouse, which has an expiration of October 2027.
Village administrators report.
I don't have a report unless you want to hear about the weather in North Carolina.
I can see it with the color of your skin. You
Sunblock. Larry,
yeah, you need
sunblock.
sunblock.
No, I'm not.
Uh,
That's Zoom. I'm actually quite tan.
Okay, good. Village clerk treasurer's report.
We completed the field work portion of our annual audit. Everything went well. They also did a uniform grant compliance audit on our FEMA projects, which is required when we get over, I think it's 750,000 in federal aid. So since we were over that, they also did one of those audits, and everything went well. The financial statements should be issued sometime late September, early October, and then they can come and present.
Thank you.
You must be relieved.
Yes, very.
Yeah, yeah.
You missed that in your report. Thank you, Kate.
Village attorney's report. Okay. Then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
No, public comment.
Public comment, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Why did somebody else just leap in before I do it? Anybody else?
Lost everyone online.
Okay. But at least I could embarrass myself with that opportunity. That's good. Okay, now I'm gonna make a motion that we adjourn.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. When